My name is Jonathan Bricker, and I'm fortunate enough to be the chair of the Arkansas District Export Council. In my primary role, I work for Regions Bank located in Bentonville, Arkansas. My banking career started off as an international business development, and now I'm a commercial lender with a focus on helping commercial and industrial businesses located in Arkansas. I want to begin today by thanking our sponsors, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. Without their support, we would not be able to even come close to putting on these webinars for free to you guys. They help us with the marketing and the technology and everything else. So they are just fantastic partners to have. So thank you to our sponsors. I really appreciate you all joining us today. For those of you that are on this webinar and aren't quite sure who the DEC is and what we do, allow me to do a quick introduction. We are a private, nonprofit organization that brings together experienced international business people with potential exporters. Each DEC member has been appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce for our real-world expertise in international trade. We have a ton of experience within our council and in many different sectors. Now, having said all that, that doesn't mean that we have all the answers, but we can introduce you to someone that does. We are basically a community of connections within the exporting world. My hope for the day is that you walk away from this webinar with more confidence in your exporting abilities. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar and you don't feel comfortable asking it here, I invite you to reach out to us on our website, exportarkansas.org, and we'll have somebody get back to you. Basically, we want to be your strategic partner to help you grow your exports, which helps grow your bottom line. All right, I'm a firm believer in you can't start planning too soon. So I want to bring something else to your attention today, and I want to invite you all to join us for our 14th Annual Governor's Award for Excellence in Global Trade. We'll be hosting this event Thursday, October 3rd, and it will be a luncheon with a networking reception for the Arkansas business community, and it's located at Robinson Hall in downtown Little Rock. The award recognizes the exporting success among our manufacturers and agricultural companies that are actively trading in international markets. We present each company with a trophy and a certificate during the ceremony. Those companies are then profiled throughout the year as winners of the Governor's Award on our website and throughout social media. So I do hope that some of you can join us in person. And if you or your company want to learn more about how to apply for the award, we'd love to visit with you. All right, house cleaning, we just ask that everyone keeps themselves muted. And if you have a question, feel free to come off mute or raise your hand. We definitely want the interaction and we want your questions to be heard because someone else may have the same question also. So at this point, I'm going to introduce you to your moderator today, Mr. Rudy Ortiz. He is the previous chairman of the DEC and the owner of Strategic Business Services, where he helps companies in a wide variety of international business and exporting needs. Rudy assists companies with their foreign market entry efforts and is a partner of the Global Market Entry Consultants, which is a global consortium of market entry experts in 32 different countries. He has an MBA in international business. He facilitates various export and supply chain related classes for the DEC, and he's a certified global business professional. Additionally, he's also fluent in Spanish. So for the reasons, this is why Rudy is our DEC education chair, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, Rudy.
Jonathan, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're going to have a great session today talking about Mexico. For those of you who have looked at LinkedIn and some of the other information that we've put out in terms of this particular class, the reality is that for most people who are starting out in international business, Mexico and Canada make a lot of sense in being the first countries that you attempt to do business with, if for no other reason the fact that they are part of the USMCA, the United States Mexico Canada Agreement, which causes any tariffs that might exist to be either very, very, very low, or in most cases, no tariffs at all. And so that makes your products much more competitive in other countries where we don't have free trade agreements with. If those countries have some high tariffs on our products, that makes you somewhat uncompetitive. For instance, Brazil has almost 100% tariffs on all American, or on most American products. And so it's very, very difficult to be competitive in Brazil. But with both Canada and Mexico being right next door to us, it makes the logistics easy, and just the entire process. And of course, culturally, we have already very strong ties, and have had for quite some time, with both Mexico and Canada. I'm pleased to present today Ms. Lauren Coughlin, who is the commercial service officer in Mexico, and she has a long history of working in international business. She was a policy advisor in DC, and worked in several different areas, including climate and ESG. And so downstream and industry operations and events and trade shows. So she's really kind of seen international trade from several different perspectives, and is very, very knowledgeable. We had her on last year, and we're quite pleased with her presentation, and we thought we'd invite her back again. So Lauren, without any further ado, take it away.
Thank you so much, Rudy. If you give me one moment, I will share my slides. There we go. Emotional support slides for what's going to be a pretty long presentation. So thank you all for signing up. Thank you so much for the invitation. I love an opportunity to speak to states. And Heidi, you just jump in whenever you see an opportunity for your polling questions. I think that it's a good opportunity to keep folks engaged. I have quite a few slides. They'll be shared with everybody. And Heidi, just for your information, I updated a few of them since I last sent them to you 20 minutes ago. So I'll send you an updated copy if you plan to share my slides after the fact. Happy for you to do so. And then I understand there'll be a few survey questions that can pop up throughout the duration of my talk. So hello, everyone. I'm Lauren Coughlin. I'm a commercial officer stationed here at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. I've been here now for 2 years. This is actually my first overseas tour. Previously, I was at the U.S. Export Assistance Center in Philadelphia, but it was the pandemic and we were all virtual at the time. So technically, I never moved to Philadelphia. I did it from my kitchen table in Maryland in a suburb of DC. So incredibly happy to be in Mexico for my first tour. In many ways, that Mexico is a really good first exporting destination for your products. It's a good place to start a career in the diplomacy business. Move on. So I'm stationed here in the embassy in Mexico City, the capital. We are also present, the U.S. Commercial Service is also present in the cities of Monterrey and Guadalajara, and in other cities throughout Mexico. State Department officials who work in the economic sections of regional consulates support us as well. So really, we do have coverage all across the country. If you have trouble in Merida, you have trouble in Nuevo Laredo, we'll have someone around who could conceivably help you. But for the most part, you'll be working with us from one of these 3 offices. Our responsibility as part of the Department of Commerce, we are the export promotion and foreign direct investment promotion arm of the U.S. government. So what that means is we help U.S. exporters sell into Mexico here in our offices, and then we attract Mexican investors to come to the United States. And our definition of investors is any work that creates jobs. So any kind of new construction, but if it's, for instance, in real estate, that isn't something that we help with. And then we also have this commercial diplomacy arm where we help U.S. companies overcome challenges to their operations in Mexico. Yeah, thank you so much, Heidi, for the poll. I think this is a super good way to get things started. Just let me know if you've already exported to Mexico. For a lot of companies, this will be your first export. So happy to hear that. And then if you've ever worked with us before, either with those of us in the field or with your local U.S. Export Assistance Center. So I'm going to minimize this for me, and then maybe we can come back to the responses that you get in a moment. Another unique point about Mexico, about working with us in Mexico, is you are uniquely served with two special positions that we only have here. Well, we have around the world, but there aren't very many of us. So we have a standards attaché, which is actually my other hat. I'm also the standards attaché for the region of Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. And then we have an IP attaché who's responsible for the same geography. So that means that if you have a specific problem related to IP protections, potentially someone stealing your work, you need help navigating patent and trademark law, that's something we can help with. And then on the standards front, which is me, if there's some sort of technical barrier to you exporting to Mexico, maybe your product qualifies, your product complies with some UL standard certification, but Mexico isn't currently accepting that. That's the kind of thing that we can help you with. Or if Mexico has a particular regulatory requirement, you have to get your product tested in a Mexican lab, and it can only be one of these 3 labs or something like that. That's something that me and my team can help you with. And then, of course, if there's a big problem such that Mexico does seem to be blocking imports from the United States through some technical means, specifically targeting certain exports in order to maybe protect another sector. Not something that I deal with often, but you would also start that with us, start the complaint with us, and we can raise it to the Mexican government and either help you with compliance or helping to convince Mexico to change it. So that's what those 2 special positions are. So I'll just speak to why we're in these 3 places. If you are unfamiliar with Mexico, of course, Mexico City is the political and economic capital. Any financial services, they're all going to be here. And then we have a significant amount of manufacturing in the center of the country, in the states surrounding Mexico City. So the city of Toluca in the city of Toluca, which is in Estado de Mexico, and Puebla, and Querétaro, and also a little bit farther out, we have a lot of manufacturing in Guanajuato and San Luis Potosí. And so we cover all of those areas from Mexico City. And then, of course, Monterrey is our real industrial hub. They have a very pro-business government. They're very interested in nearshoring, and continuing to attract investment from the United States. So you'll find a lot of U.S. companies present in Monterrey. And the industries that dominate are really automotive, appliances, electronics, packaging. I see here medical devices. Yeah, that's also relevant. But also you'll note that there's a strong food and beverage sector in Monterrey. So they purchase U.S. technologies in things like water purification, HVAC systems, things like that. In Guadalajara, it's really the center of 2 sectors. It's in the middle of really the agricultural heart of Mexico. So agribusiness is managed out of Guadalajara for us, but it's also the Silicon Valley of Mexico. Guadalajara doesn't have, I don't know if you follow the news, Mexico City and Monterrey do struggle with access to clean, reliable water. Guadalajara, everybody has their issues, but overall, no such complaints. So they're doing a really good job attracting high-tech businesses. And so they're really trying to get at the front of like semiconductor investments, taking advantage of nearshoring incentives and nearshoring priorities for a lot of US companies. And so you'll find that we have specialists that are local Mexicans that have worked here, some for decades, and they'll specialize in a particular sector, and then they'll be located in the region that makes sense. So of course, manufacturing largely covered out of Monterrey, and then agribusiness covered out of Guadalajara. A little bit different in that we cover ICT and tech out of Mexico City, but that's because it's also a highly political issue, and a lot of ICT companies are headquartered in Mexico City. Right, so I touched on this at the beginning. This is just everything that we do in our offices in embassies and consulates overseas. So first, trade and investment promotion, and that's kind of the matchmaking services that we do. You can come to us for a particular service. We have a number of fee-based services. And I'll note that the reason that we're fee-based is because we have an obligation from Congress not to favor certain businesses over others. So we are organized so that you cannot complain to your senator saying that we closed your business by helping your competitor. The fee structure is really a way to produce a more level playing field. And that's why it's not that we're struggling to keep the lights on. Well, it is the US government. Sometimes we're struggling to keep the lights on. But primarily it's for this level playing field so that everyone really has equal access to our support. Commercial diplomacy is different. That's something that we don't charge for because it opens markets for multiple companies, for multiple US exporters. So trade and investment promotion, that's for you to find a buyer, to find a distributor, to find a partner, an agent, something on the ground. But commercial diplomacy is if there's some sort of barrier, like what I was talking about on those first few slides about regulatory concerns or IP concerns. Advocacy is a little different than both. Advocacy is what you can ask for if you're trying to sell something to the Mexican government. And advocacy services have an application requirement that we don't have for the other two categories. And then if you qualify for advocacy, we advocate in favor of the US product, not necessarily semiconductors are us is the best provider of semiconductors in the world. So it's kind of tricky. There are a lot of rules related to advocacy in the same way that there are rules related to our B2B and trade promotion services. But if you have something that you're trying to sell to the Mexican government, and I'll speak in upcoming slides about opportunities for that, it's a really huge support. And I think that's something that you really need if you're going up against foreign competitors. Other issues kind of fall into, I've always thought, similar buckets. Market access, kind of like commercial diplomacy. If you find that something's closed to you and you need to open it, you want to sell your stuff, but Mexico's leaning towards adopting a different type of technology, we can help you with that. IP, like our IP attaches work. Enforcement and compliance, that's something that we handle from headquarters. We do not do that here at Post. And that's if you identify that a foreign competitor is engaging in unfair competitive practices, such as dumping competitive goods in your sector. And then, of course, safeguarding technology. And so that's kind of like our IP concerns. Of course, we promote cross-border data privacy rules, all sorts of different protections for your technology specifically. All right. So Mexico, it's a huge market. In terms of GDP, it is the second in Latin America, only after Brazil. The population, 132 million, it would be a little bigger this year. In comparison, the US is 333. And in comparison, the US GDP is 25 trillion. But still a significant market, significant GDP per capita. That inflation number, I'm very sorry, I'm looking at it now, that is quite out of date. Inflation has gone down significantly. Now it's around 4.5% to 5%. Let me move my screen so I can see the other facts. Yeah, so a population really concentrated in cities, which aligns well with the services we provide. We're located in the most populous cities. Really high poverty rate in Mexico. Of course, remember that's an international definition of poverty. and there might still be commercial opportunities for you in areas that experience poverty. Competitive, absolutely, definitely competitive. Some level of corruption, that's something I can speak to later in the security related slides. And this most recent administration that will conclude soon, very focused on economic diversification. Just wanted to show a snapshot of the current exchange rate. For those who follow Mexico, we just had a presidential election. It has made markets in Mexico a little unsure. We're not entirely sure what this new administration is going to do in terms of continuing to allow significant foreign direct investment into Mexico. We don't know what it's going to mean for the energy sector. So the markets are a little unstable, but that's very good for the exchange rate. Temporarily, at least, while we wait for people to react to a new president. Relevant if you have any vacations to Mexico coming up. Also relevant for me because I'm paid in dollars, but I spend in pesos. Good time to visit. Pardon me. So depending on how you slice it, Mexico is the most significant economic and commercial partner that the United States has. By some categories, it's Canada, but Mexico is the top trading partner for the United States in terms of total two-way trade in goods. And that the data on the bottom is a little bit more up to date than the data at the top. It adds up to $799 billion, and that's cross-border trade. In a number of sectors, we have incredibly integrated supply chains, and I'm speaking largely about automotive manufacturing, the construction industry, of course, and medical devices and pharmaceuticals are examples of highly integrated supply chains. Sorry, I keep having to move my little face so I can see my own slides. Yeah, so this is the same information I just shared, except that it's, again, a little out of date because now that Mexico number is a bit higher. All right, so sector specific. These are some of our top categories of exports to Mexico. So you see, of course, ICT, chemicals, energy, transportation equipment, and which for some reason is duplicated. I'm sorry about that. And Heidi, I'll update that for the slides that I send you. I'm not sure what that transportation equipment should be, that bigger number, not the small one. Oh, there we go. I see what it is. Sorry. Imports from Mexico and then exports. Apologies. I changed this slide and I swapped it out for something. So exactly. Sorry for misspeaking. The point of this slide is to show that there's similar categories in terms of both imports and exports from Mexico.
Yeah, Lauren, one of the things that also shows is how much cross-border trade there is between the United States and Mexico. What happens very, very often, and this is indicated here, is that the United States will send some maybe unfinished parts to Mexico where they're enhanced in Mexico, and then they come back into the United States, or in some cases, they originate in Mexico and wind up going to the United States for final manufacturing. So there is a tremendous amount of cross-border trade between the United States. And I'm wondering, Lauren, whether you're seeing a trend that it looks like it's going to be developing as we start having less and less globalization. It looks like we're going to be counting on Mexico and Canada and maybe some of our South American partners even more than we are right now. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah. So to address your first comment about just the quantity of trade, this comes out to $1.2 million in products that move across the border every minute in one direction or the other. So yeah, that example of autos is an excellent example of where we have one part made in the United States, another part made in Mexico. We pass them back and forth, and then ultimately it's stuck on a car, finally on either side of the border, but then potentially exported back to the United States. So your question about things moving more to Mexico, I think is absolutely something that we can expect. And I hate to use buzzwords, but it's the impetus of nearshoring. There's a lot of benefit towards regionalizing your supply chains, and Mexico is the clear strongest beneficiary of this effort with the United States, just because we have an existing trade infrastructure. We have the USMCA, which I'll speak to in a little bit about benefits, incentives for trading with Mexico. Mexico itself has fiscal incentives for businesses like that to move to Mexico as part of the IMEX program, which is a free trade zone. They're called maquiladoras. You can move your supply chain into a maquiladora, and then you don't have to pay the same sales tax for products that are bound to move back to the United States anyway. Absolutely. For the United States government, the priority sectors to do this coming out of COVID were really medical devices. We saw a big push from the Department of Commerce and even USAID to promote Mexico's regulatory environment to allow for greater regionalization of medical device supply chains. Autos, we already have it. We don't really need to promote it. Going forward, we definitely are very interested in regionalization of semiconductor supply chains. And of course, we've seen that affect all corners of the market, from autos to appliances, of course, high-tech equipment that has chips. Mexico is very interested in getting on board with that. So we're doing some work with the Mexican government to make them ready to at least host some portion of the semiconductor supply chain here in Mexico. Various Mexican states are trying actively to court big tech companies, you know, your Intels, your Qualcomms, Skyworks, to do more in Mexico. I think what we're seeing is that most likely in that specific supply chain, we'll see packaging move to Mexico in a way that Mexico hasn't currently served the market. In terms of high-tech design, that probably isn't going to come to Mexico. It's just a segment of a really profitable sector that is already better established in markets like Singapore, Taiwan. But yeah, there's a big opportunity in high-tech for Mexico to take a bite of that really important ICT supply chain.
Yeah, and so while right now things are a little bit unsure because of the election, and you know, almost in any country when you have a change of government, there's always a little bubble there for a short period of time. But the things that are trending right now, these are, you know, macroeconomic things that are occurring, and I think that longer term, medium and longer term, Mexico is going to be a really good country to do business with.
Could not disagree. Specifically, since I'm talking to a state deck, I threw in an Arkansas fact. And if you're interested in, if you're potentially joining us from another state, we of course have this broken down by other states. Significant exports from Arkansas to Mexico. And let me pull up sectors. And then this is a chart that I stole from the Arkansas government. Let me move my face again so I can actually see it. I suppose no surprises there. Agricultural exports, but also metals, auto parts, and aluminum are in your top exports. So there's a piece of news that I would like to share specifically with this audience because it could potentially affect you. There's a new measure in Mexico where steel and it's currently steel will be applied to aluminum down the road. They're going to require a mill. They are requiring a certificate of the mill from which the steel and later aluminum was sourced. This overview is available on our website. if you were to just Google any of this text, it should come right up. If this is something that's affecting your businesses, or you think it might, I can tell you for a fact it's affecting some auto parts exporters, some exporters of other steel parts. I met with some manufacturers of steel electrical components. They're being affected. This is something that if you're working through a customs broker, they are probably able to walk you through this, but if you find that maybe they're not, we're happy to chat with you and talk you through this new requirement. It can be quite administratively burdensome, I think, if you're unfamiliar with it. Whenever it first came into effect, it resulted in some shipments of steel products being held up at the border for weeks, in some cases months, and then the exporter was on the hook to store it, while the importer of record was able to complete this process and demonstrate that they had a mill certificate. Not exactly something that I'm an expert on, but we do have two folks in our office that have been dealing with this much more closely, Mario Vidania and Manny Velasquez.
Yeah, and Lauren, as it turns out, back in 2020 and 2021, the Mexican government instituted an export licensing regime on steel tubing and many other products, but in particular, the thing that wound up being that really biting companies here in Arkansas was the steel tubing. And as you said, it was held up for 2.5 months. And so consequently, the companies here in Arkansas that needed that steel tubing to finish their products were unable to do so. So, I was involved in trying to rectify those issues. But yeah, absolutely, this is something that's going to impact you. And so if you've got any kind of steel or aluminum tubing as part of your manufacturing process, this is something that you definitely have to take into account.
Yeah, difficult to get around this one. There are a couple other kind of similar, potentially administratively burdensome measures. A lot for chemicals exporters. If there are any of those on the call, I cover chemicals, so I'm happy to chat about those. They're not as new, so I didn't bother including them in my slide deck. Yeah, a lot of measures like this are beginning to proliferate at the conclusion of the AMLO government. No surprise there. They're trying to kind of push out all of their policy priorities before the new folks come in. So for us, we've been quite busy just wrapping our heads around various new proposed or in effect requirements. And these are things that affect customs, fiscal policy, things that are coming out of the tax administration. And for me, I cover energy, a few different energy requirements related to either EVs or battery storage. If your company works in anything like that and you're seeing changes, probably someone in our office has worked on the measure, so we'd be happy to meet with you and talk you through it. All right. So beyond the challenges, while there are definitely administrative burdens, that doesn't negate anything that I'm about to say about the benefits of selling to Mexico. It's just one speed bump, tope in Mexico, which we love, to maybe slow you down a little bit, but we're happy to help you overcome it. So as discussed, we have a really strong supply chain for various types of manufacturing. Like in the United States, Mexico has those different hubs where it would be very cozy for a US company to move or start exporting their products to those specific hubs. Facts to the bottom, we already talked about that. All right. So the obvious benefit of exporting to Mexico is just that you're so close. Can't argue with proximity. The proximity is reflected in costs of travel to Mexico. Flights are cheaper. You have a long border. It is possible to cross by car. For folks like me that maybe make relatively frequent crossings, you can actually fly to the border, cross on foot, and then take a second flight to your final destination. Going between between cities in Mexico, if you have a little bit of time to kill, can actually be quite cheap. And then those border crossings, as long as you do your research and go to the right one and not one that's known for being backed up, yeah, just quite cheap compared to any other market to go back and forth. So of course, the market size, it's very diverse, it's large, it's growing. We are building a middle class for sure. You can see it in the way people are spending and the way people are choosing to live, where they're vacationing. And you're seeing among that middle class, people are starting to think about green products. They're thinking about their sustainability. They're making long-term purchases for their family. I think you see it kind of in all parts of commerce. Of course, we have a very strong shared culture. We do very well with people-to-people connections. Mexicans are quite familiar with US brands. Let me move my facts. I know I have origin facts at the bottom. There we go. 61 million US residents are of Mexican origin, and then vice versa. We have 1.2 million US citizens living in Mexico, and then tourism is just undeniable, and we have tourism going both ways. It's not just spring breakers in Cancun. I can speak briefly to the cultural affinity. Look at me. I don't really blend in with the Mexican population terribly well, but my mannerisms, my jokes, my humor, it's exactly the same. So even though I look a little different, I have no problem fitting in, eating things on the street and making friends. It shocks me how similar our cultures are every day. Our taste in music is kind of going in the same direction, our taste in humor, and all of this is only being further leveled by younger generations using social media. We see the same memes, we see the same jokes, we see jokes from Mexico, they see jokes from the United States. We're only getting more and more similar. So yeah, if you found doing business with Mexico easy 10 years ago, I'm sure it's only easier. All right, in terms of money, of course, USMCA, thank you. No tariffs for US-made products. There are ongoing negotiations about the content requirements of specific products, especially as it relates to autos. I think if you're in this business, you already know that better than I do. So we expect, or we will have a USMCA review in 2026. And just to dispel maybe any concerns that you may have accumulated by reading the media about the USMCA review, I can assure you that the review is not a renegotiation. If either party, the US or Mexico or Canada, wanted to withdraw from USMCA, it's like a job. They could do it in 2 weeks, give 2 weeks notice, and they can leave USMCA. The review is just going to be going through the agreement and seeing where are we doing well, where do we need to keep working. For example, there's a chapter on chemicals. We haven't really done much on chemicals. We haven't done much to facilitate trade in chemicals. I would expect that's something that we're going to look at during the review and see what we need to do if we need to create high-level working groups in this space. It's really not going to be a way for us to hash out our differences and our complaints, because we already have that through the review and panel process. And we're currently hashing out some of our disagreements in the agreement. All right, in terms of growth, of course, we've seen stable economic growth in Mexico. COVID weakened it, but we've seen it bounce back significantly. I think Mexico bounced back a little bit slower than the United States, but they certainly did. The outgoing president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who goes by AMLO, helpfully, his government has really invested in big infrastructure projects, and then that can include rail projects, the Tren Maya or the Trans-Isthmus Corridor projects that you may have heard of, and also a new refinery at Dos Bocas refinery, and a new airport outside of Mexico City. So none of those projects are completely finished, and it will be the priority of this outgoing administration. And then we expect the incoming president, Claudia Sheinbaum, to also continue investment in those huge mega projects. So those will represent really big opportunities for US companies, continue to represent opportunities for US companies, for which we would encourage US suppliers to apply for advocacy so that we can really go to the Mexican government and advocate for your products or services. Oops. So to be successful here, luckily, that travel is pretty accessible. We really want you to have some sort of Mexican presence. We have a great network of agents and distributors. Mexican buyers do want to have someone that they can call, they can WhatsApp, that speaks Spanish, that they can rely on for questions about either, payment, service, anything like that. We highly recommend you have some sort of Mexican contact on the ground. Price is important in this market. It's relatively price sensitive, but we don't say, compared to some other markets, we don't say that price is the bottom line. Even if you're not the cheapest guy on the market, you still have a shot here. And so we see really interesting trade shows with a variety of products from ranging in quality and price. And there's a buyer for every price point. Spanish, Mexico actually has a slightly lower rate of bilingualism than the United States. While your executives that you speak with probably have some tie to the United States. Maybe they studied here, or they studied English in school, or they studied English in Europe when in school. You have to assume that your materials will at some point get to somebody who probably doesn't have great English skills. So we highly recommend that you provide all of your brochures, marketing materials in Spanish, and we're happy to hook you up with translators that can update your websites and your printed documents. And that's relevant if you're coming to a trade show. You might be able to have conversations on the floor of a trade show in English, no problem. But if you're leaving behind literature, we want it to be in Spanish because we don't know where that literature is going to go in the company. All right, so, pardon me. You can find service providers that help you with translation, with legal services, with financial services, advertising companies, even HR, like hiring and headhunter services on our business service provider directory. This is a list that we maintain within the Foreign Commercial Service. These are vetted companies. They're people that we see at events that we know US companies have worked with, and we can, to a reasonable extent, vouch for these companies. You can access this list on this link. And I'll note that for any energy companies interested in investing in Mexico, we have a new category for energy service providers. So folks that'll help you with permitting and specific energy requirements in Mexico. Permitting is a big one. It's a bit of a roadblock to a lot of companies. Pardon me. So briefly to note our team, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see all of our officers here in Mexico. So officers like me, diplomats that are here for a finite period of time. You'll see that we're losing a few people. If you've worked with us before, we're going to lose our IP attaché, and she'll be replaced this fall. And then George Ayash, who covers the automotive and infrastructure sectors, he'll be leaving relatively shortly, as well as Ken Duckworth, who covers the aerospace and defense sector. He's going to be leaving actually first. He'll leave in just a couple weeks. So, and our principal commercial officer in Monterrey has already left and will be replaced in the next few weeks. So you're going to see some new faces, but that's how it goes. I'm here for a 3-year tour. George was 2 years. It really ranges from 2. The maximum you can be here is 5 years, and that's a bit of a unique situation. You know, you have a kid graduating high school or something, so you're sticking around. Within our staff of local specialists, however, those folks do tend to stay here. We have some people in the office who have worked here for upwards of 30 years, with a lot of people who are around the 10-year mark. So they know this job incredibly well. A lot of them have been covering the same sectors their whole time here, so they're deeply entrenched in like Mexican society among those sectors. You know, we get invited to all of the association events. Our specialists are known as experts and invited to everything. They have incredible access here in Mexico. So if you're interested in a gold key service or an SCP, that's something that really matters. We don't have a ton of new faces among our local specialists. We have established experts known in the field. Challenges and opportunities. I suppose I didn't really speak to challenges so much beyond the administrative issues I mentioned. Of course, Chinese competition, but as you know, China undercuts us in many markets on price. And as I said, that's not such a huge challenge here. Of course, and for some buyers, and if you're selling to the Mexican government, you'll find price undercutting to be really challenging, I suppose. Increasing government control of the energy sector. We've seen that under the AMLO administration. The AMLO administration wants to see Pemex and the state electricity utility, CFE, just control more and more of the market. So I won't go into too many details, but that can just make it a bit harder for a US company to operate here. I didn't create this bullet. I would not say militarization of the ports. I think that is the wrong word. It's military control of the ports, infrastructure, and customs. So within Mexico, the military is statistically incredibly uncorrupt compared to customs sectors, other government agencies, the police. The military here, by international standards, is pretty squeaky clean. So AMLO decided to put some of his most important projects under the auspices of the military. So the Marines, the Army, they control some of these large infrastructure projects. Yes, they're not corrupt, but they don't necessarily know that much about these sectors that they're working in now. So we do see in a lot of cases, the folks that we're dealing with just don't come from the industry. They don't really know the players. They don't know the technology. In terms of customs, these are people that were, infantry soldiers, and now they're in charge of checking your products as they cross the border. So with that, we have a lot of, misunderstandings or times whenever the Mexican government and the US exporter, they're not really speaking the same language in terms of issues that they're overcoming.
Lauren, question for you in terms of that last point, and I'm well aware of what's going on there as well. So do the freight forwarders, like the US freight forwarders and the Mexican freight forwarders, are they able to assist with any of those misunderstandings that naturally occur because of the situation?
Certainly, yeah. Very few issues of that nature actually make it to us and require US government intervention. A lot of times it's just sending more paperwork than you ever had to send before. Some instances of customs officials wanting to see photographs of when the stuff was loaded on the truck, whenever the truck passed through the gate, all sorts of things that a company is probably capable of providing. It's just a bit of an administrative burden to educate them, to make them comfortable with your product entering. We do have issues of within Mexico. The AMLO administration is really concerned about fentanyl precursors entering the country. So I mentioned there are a lot of more punitive measures for chemicals imports. That's largely what those measures are trying to target. There's also some white collar crime in the exportation and importation of finished fossil fuels. So there are some measures meant to counter that can be a bit of a barrier to your exports and maybe not exactly solving the problem that they're intending to solve. I guess that brings me to my final point, a rise in crime related to commercial interests. So we're seeing that a lot in chemicals, fuels. The cartels are present on the border, and there are instances of deliveries being stolen. But any company that does cross-border trade, I mean, this is something that they're aware of and they've been dealing with for years. Just maybe they're dealing with a little bit more of it than they used to. I suppose I already spoke through pretty much all of these sectors. So I'll just hit the few that I hadn't mentioned yet. Water. Water is a huge problem for some of Mexico's major industrial and urban centers. So we definitely see opportunities to sell water technologies in Mexico. We are present at a water trade show in Mexico City, and we're interested in putting together a water trade mission. This is my sector, so something I know a lot about. Highly, highly recommend that water technology providers consider Mexico as an export destination.
Yeah, Lauren, question for you on in terms of this water crisis. Are you talking about a crisis in the sense of there isn't enough water, or that there isn't enough clean water?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, so in some places, for instance, one of the water sources for Mexico City is Valle de Bravo. It's a big water reservoir. The water itself would be relatively clean, but there's a lot of aging infrastructure surrounding the reservoir, and so like old septic systems are leaking into the water reservoir. So there are opportunities to clean up that water reservoir. For the most part, the water entering Mexico City is coming in clean, but there's some infrastructure issues within the city where the water gets dirty once it enters the Mexico City water system. So yeah, I think there's opportunity everywhere. We've visited wastewater treatment plants. They need a lot. I think that I'm seeing less interest in like huge processing equipment, but a lot of opportunity in cheaper efficiency gains. So like updated SCAD software, biological solutions to clean water that don't necessarily involve like a huge purchase of processing equipment. We're not seeing like huge pump sales, but a lot of little things like that, smaller solutions. And then household solutions. So anything that you can sell to that growing middle class that provides them reliable drinking water. So we see some companies that produce water from the atmosphere, or some that are in-home filtration systems. Huge demand, huge appetite for that.
Thank you.
Reasonable. People want access to their water. Education, I haven't mentioned that. Honestly, I don't work with it too much, but we do see that there's a ton of cross-border flow of international students. Great opportunity for U.S. Institutions to attract Mexican students, and our specialist who's responsible for that sector is phenomenal. She brings U.S. institutions to Mexico to recruit Mexican students all the time. I'm actually in a building that does a really good job bringing with classes for ESL and how to pass exams like the TOEFL and SAT to attract Mexican students to the United States. I have a big smudge on my face, don't I? Yeah, just a lot of investment to bring Mexican students to the United States. Autos, I feel like I've beat that to death. ICT too. Financial services, that is one of my new sectors. It's a huge opportunity for U.S. companies. Mexicans are largely underbanked, and the Mexican financial sector needs a lot of the services that the United States has. So in terms of like fund managers, alternative asset funds, or private equity funds. We see a lot of business from Mexico for management offerings of that type.
Yeah, something that a lot of people may not be aware of is that services of this sort, obviously, if you're providing financial services and other kinds, that in fact is an export, and services is the fastest growing sector of exports almost worldwide. So, if you're in the services business, whether you're an engineering firm, a financial firm, an insurance firm, any kind of services that you can provide, for instance, software solutions, those are really good export products.
For sure. And anything that you can sell to target these sectors, especially if you can sell something to target like the automotive sector or growing ICT sectors. Absolutely, big opportunity. A little bit about what we're up to. So part of trade promotion is we are present at trade shows. So we're present at both Mexican and US trade shows. So at a US trade show, we'll bring a delegation of Mexican buyers. And for the US, of course, we'll bring US exporters down and we'll put you in a USA pavilion. Am I running out of time? Is that?
Actually, Lauren, we do have a question. Mr. Morales, if you want to unmute yourself. Okay, well, he'd raised his hand. Sorry about that.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, feel free to interrupt me. So we have questions and keep people engaged. Up here that I don't need to talk through it. This is just a list of opportunities. A few that I'll call out because it might not be obvious what they are. Mexipan in the yellow box, that's bread and bread type things. Let me see if I have any notes on that one. Well, Puro mascotas, oh, pet food, that's obvious. Expo Mueble, that's furniture. INA is related to auto parts. And then Green Expo is clean technologies in general. And I should note that alongside the TEP for Green Expo, we also have one for Aquatech, as I mentioned. Water technology is a huge priority. All right, I can shoot through this really quick. Just some of our security statistics for companies that operate within Mexico and are interested in getting U.S. Embassy updates on security situations. There is a group for business leaders to meet with our regional security office and talk about concerns. And this is something, if you experience some sort of security issue that affects your business, you would report it to that group, and then we would advise, we could facilitate conversations with the Mexican government and give you advice to avoid such things. But just a note for folks who are planning to travel to Mexico for their own purposes, it's not terribly unsafe compared to other areas.
Yeah, you don't want to be in Detroit, I'll tell you that.
Mexico City is different than the US examples up here in that crime is very localized. And so it'll be in a specific neighborhood. And so with a savvy friend or us to guide you, it is very easy to avoid the worst of Mexican crime.
All right, Mr. Herbert Morales.
Yes. Good afternoon. I'm sorry, I was having some problems to mute a minute ago. It's a great event. Thank you so much for you guys to put this event together. And very quick introduction, Herbert Morales in Northwest Arkansas. I have been involved in international trade for several years. And right now I got a couple of joint ventures. One is in Monterrey, Mexico. But my role is purchase new technology in the US for the security industry. So if we have any company in Arkansas who is involved in security, let's see, we're more focused in virtual training, SWAT teams for police officers in Mexico, simulators, that kind of the technology we are looking to import from United States to Mexico. But I am working also in another joint venture, and my attention, I got a question about the water. We are working with one group of innovators here in Arkansas to develop a system who can detect water leaks from the main distribution water towers to the final consumers. So I don't know. I would like to see if there's any information that I can get maybe the next trade show in Mexico, because I know water is very important. Just in the United States, we have the statistics is about maybe 26% of the water is getting lost between the big distribution towers and the final consumer. And I bet in the big cities are that percentage is bigger. So that's my question is regarding to the water. If there's any water show coming up, and if where folks in Mexico are aware about those technologies there.
Yeah. And Herbert, we're going to provide Lauren's contact information at the very end, and so feel free to contact her. Now we need to go ahead and wrap this up, and so if you have any questions at this time, that would be great. And so feel free to raise your hand, and then we'll call on you.
All right, Rudy, I don't see anything. Herbert, that's a great question, and I do invite you to reach out to Lauren. I think she could definitely be beneficial to you as well. So if there's no other questions, I thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to be here with us. Again, thank you to our sponsors of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions.
And Jonathan, I think, do we have a survey this time, Ms. Haiti?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see here. We are going to do this one now.
Well, actually, my apologies. That's fine. I was thinking about the survey that you usually do at the very end. Is this it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We'll just let people do that on their own time.
So Lauren, also, if I need to do a site visit, I should definitely reach out to you too, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Even if you don't need any of our services, it's good for us to know we can give you some tips on other spots that we think you should go to make your time worthwhile. And what I didn't get to in my security slide is for any any US citizen traveling to Mexico, we want you to sign up for SAFE, SAFE. That's a State Department service, and you can do it on your phone. You can do it through a QR code. Just Google it. You'll get everything you need, and you'll get text or WhatsApp or email, all of the above updates on if there's any kind of security or safety issue in Mexico. So things like earthquakes, or if there's a shooting at a mall, stay away from the mall, something like that you might not know as a traveler who's just passing through and not watching the news. Definitely enroll in SAFE. It is our best resource to keep you informed.
Wow.
Yeah, two less points. Want to make sure that you guys received the slideshow that Lauren used today. It should have been in the chat. I think Ms. Heidi put it out, and also probably in a couple of days, the recording of this webinar will be available as well. Is that correct, Heidi?
Yes, I'll have it out by Friday.
Okay, perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate your attendance, and hope that you guys found this worthwhile. Please feel free to contact any of the people that's listed here with any questions that you might have. And Lauren, thank you again for being able to be with us today and giving us some of your expertise and your time.
Thanks for having me back.
Thank you all.
Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.